Good evening. This week's Parsha, Parshas Kedoshim, there is a famous difference of opinion between Rashi and the Ramban, what the word Kedoshim means. Now, the word in and of itself means to separate. Like when a husband under a chuppah says to a wife, Hari at mekudeshes li, it means to separate, that she now becomes osur to the entire world. She's separated from the entire world. And Rashi says, Hevi perushim min ho'arayos o min ho'avera, that this admonition of the pasuk, Kedoshim tiyu, that you should be holy. What does it mean, holy or separate? That you're not doing averas, and you're not doing things which are illicit relationships. But the Ramban disagrees. And he says that Kadesh atzmach b'muterloch, that you have to work to make yourself higher, saintlier, with that which is mutter. Now, when a person, for instance, takes a steak and he makes a bracha, achroina, so under basic circumstances, he was yoitze. And it's mutter, it's 1,000% allowed. And all the neshamas that have to go up, if he says Shir Amalos or Al Naros Bavel, those are psukim from Tilim, that elevate the neshamas just in case he didn't say a Dvar Torah. Because every food has in it a neshama, which could either elevate the person or drag him down. We know there was a Kohen Gadol, Yochanan, who was a Kohen Gadol for 80 years. Sheshimish bekahuna shmoinim shana. Velibsof nasa tzeduki. And at the end, he became an apikoros. And it was from, says the Arizal, how could such a thing happen that he went for 80 years in and out of the Kodesh Kedoshim? And now he became a person that didn't believe in Torah Shebaal Peh. It's almost an impossibility. But the Arizal says that he ate some vegetables that had the neshamas of Rishoyim, and he knew how to be mechaven, to be mala, all those neshamas, and he got caught off guard. So says the Arizal. But anyway, when a person eats and lives in the world normally, he is within the realm of doing the right thing, why he came down to this world, Olam Hazeh, and he doesn't have to feel guilty about anything. But says the Ramban, what happens if, let's say, the person eats 10 steaks? We can't say he did anything wrong because the steak was glatt kosher. He made the bracha in the beginning and at the end. But the gluttonous of eating so much is what he channels his words, that a yid should strive to be able and not to eat the 3 pieces of delicious cake that were left over from a party the night before. Eat 1. And that's the difference of Rashi, who says it's illicit relationships to stay away from, and the Ramban that says that you have to sanctify yourself by separating and by refraining from overindulgence and Olam Hazeh, every single area of indulgence. Now, the Chassam Sofer said on this, on the Rashi and on the Ramban, that why did Moshe Rabbeinu, why did he instruct everyone to come together. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said it, and he carried out the thing that Daber el kol adas b'nei Yisrael. That means when a message had to be given, it just says Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. It doesn't say Daber el kol adas Yisrael, that the men, the women, the children, everyone had to come to be here when this was said, Kedoshim Tiyu. So the Chassam Sofer answers and says, because people would think that you have to be like a lahavdal, a monk on top of a mountain, or a nun in a monastery, lahavdal alfei havdalas, and never get married, never have children, never do a lot of fasting. That's the Catholics. That's not how Yidden live. We are able to be married and to have physical contact and have families and children and a lot of things, and never, and that's the purpose of being in Olam Hazeh. And that, says the Chassam Sofer, is why everyone was brought together, the women and the children, because to tell Klal Yisrael that you're living normal lives as human beings, you eat and you are married and you have children, and that is wonderful. But do it in a way that you never cross the line and have an illicit, an isser, a marrying your sister, being with your sister, or as the Ramban says, eating the 10 steaks. That's the message. Don't overdo or cross the line. And that is the job and the kavanah for each and every Yid. And like the Balatanya, his whole theme is to make a dira batachtonim, to make a living place, a house for Hashem in this world. And that means by giving a nachas ruach for what a human being was supposed to live for and to do. And not be separating from every aspect of the gashmias and the physical in the world. Now the Balaturim says on the pasuk, Lo solin pe'ula socher, that you're not supposed to pay wages late. When you have a worker, you're supposed to pay them on time. They do the day's job. At the end of the day or the end of the week, whatever was made up, you have to pay him. And in the same pasuk that it talks about paying workers on time, it says, V'lo sekalel cheresh, you should not curse the deaf person. And Chazal say, because maybe he'll get in front of you or you'll have to move or whatever's bothering you. But it's not just talking about a cheresh. It's talking about why is it in the same pasuk? They ask, what's one thing got to do with the other? And they answer and say, because quite often, a person only knows the fact that he has to be paid on time. If indeed the person beyond his circumstance couldn't pay on time, the person is not allowed to curse him. And the Balaturim, we're talking about the Balaturim from the beginning, 200 years of Rishonim, he was the Rosh's son, says that a person could turn to cursing another person because he wasn't paid on time. Now, it all depends on the circumstances. I remember I once spoke to Rav Pam Zecher Tzadik Livracha, and I asked him, at that time in my school, Baruch Hashem, we paid on time. There were plenty of times we did not pay on time because we didn't have the money. And when the money came in, we gave it. So I asked Rav Pam, at that time, Torah Vodaas was way behind in its payroll. 4 months, 5 months. That what was the heter of Torah Vodaas to pay so late? And he answered and said that if somebody takes a job and they have the understanding that things are going to be late, it's made clear that we run a institution, a Makom Kodosh, we run a yeshiva, and children don't always pay tuition, and even those that pay, some are backlogged months and sometimes even years, so there's a shortage of money. And if the person takes the job with that understanding that they're working in an institution that there can be very great difficulty living up to the halacha of lo solin pe'ula socher ad boker, then the institution is not over it, because that was like a condition made clear to the person before he took the job. And all of these institutions strive, yeshivas and Bais Yaakov, whatever it is, strive to pay. We know that the morale and the needs of families depend on timely payrolls. And I can attest to you that most yeshivas work their heads off to make sure that things are paid in time. Now, in those days, Rav Pam called in 4 of his Talmidim who were, let's say, well-to-do, and said the yeshiva's in trouble financially. Take on to be the VAD, the group that's going to see to it that the payroll should be paid on time. And indeed, for the last 30 years, there has never been in Torah Vodaas a late payment to anyone. So we are today in the days of Sfira, and we know that Rabbi Akiva, because the pasuk in this week's Seder says, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha," that you're supposed to love your fellow Jew like yourself. And Rabbi Akiva came to this pasuk. He said to his Talmidim, "Ze klal godel batorah," that this is an important cementing factor of the Torah, that you have to love others as you love yourself. Meaning that the standard of treatment, you can't be comfortable with one thing and then do the opposite for somebody else. Now we know that Rabbi Akiva lost 24,000 Talmidim. And there are many lessons to learn from it. Whether you keep Sfira from Pesach up until Lag BaOmer, and then it's over for you after Lag BaOmer, you could listen to music, you could take haircuts, you could go to weddings, you can do all these things. Or you have the minhag, as the Shulchan Aruch says, there are some who begin like the Avelis of Sfira with Rosh Chodesh Iyar. Rosh Chodesh Iyar being, I'm speaking to you now Sunday night. Rosh Chodesh begins Tuesday night. It's Wednesday and Thursday. Rosh Chodesh this year. And those who keep the minhag of the Arizal, like Chabad, they don't take haircuts from Pesach up until Shavuos, till the last day before Shavuos. Those who keep the second minhag of Rosh Chodesh, they go up to Lag BaOmer, they'll take haircuts, go to weddings, and then after Lag BaOmer, they're not allowed to do that until the Shloshis Yemei Hagbola, the 3 days before Shavuos. But that has nothing to do with those who keep from Pesach, not from Rosh Chodesh, from Pesach up to Lag BaOmer, and then it's over for them. But even in Chabad, that they don't, according to the strict statement of the Arizal, not to take haircuts, but I know the Lubavitcher Rebbe on occasions took on Lag BaOmer a haircut. So whatever the minig is in your family or in your community, you can be mahader and whatever that minig is. I remember once asking Rav Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, as a menal of a girls' school, that they do lots of singing and there's lots of music and things, that what do? There's some girls who are from families that keep the first minig, and there's some that keep the second. Does that mean that we have to go through the whole sphera with no music and no dancing, because there's some that can't do it in the beginning, some can't do it later, so we have to go all 7 weeks complete with nothing? So he said that each and every school could adopt the minig, one minig, and for the girls who are in school at that time are able, let's say if their minig is the first way, let's say the second way, so they're not after Lag BaOmer allowed to hear music again until Shlosh Shmei Agbola. But they are, if they're in school, if the school adopted the first minig from Pesach until Lag BaOmer. But I want to talk about Rabbi Akiva a little bit, because the Bnei Yissaschar, the Gemara says, Shelo nohagu kavod zeh lo zeh, that they were not mechabed, the respect that they had for one another was lacking. There was a problem. Now, if I told you that the Chofetz Chaim didn't have respect when he was in yeshiva and growing up for his chaverim, you wouldn't believe it. Said the Chofetz Chaim, who is the paradigm, was the perfect example of Bein Adam L'Chavero and being careful in Lashon Hora and Rechilas and everything else, you wouldn't believe it. So how could we believe it about the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva when each and every one of them was a Tana? And I've mentioned to you on occasion that every Tana mentioned in the Mishnah, or even the Amoraim who were of a lesser Madrega, if they couldn't go into a cemetery and tell everyone to stand up, they're not mentioned in the Mishnah or in the Gemara. So a person that could go into a cemetery and tell everyone to get out of your graves and stand up, we think that he didn't respect the other Tanoim. So the Bnei Yissaschar explains that we say on Pesach that there are nun Sharei Bina, that there are 50 gateways to the Shar, to the gateway of the Olam called Bina. And if the Jews would not have been taken out of Mitzrayim at that moment, they were at the 49th level, sunk into it. They would have waited another day or week. They would have fell into the 50th, and there was no coming back. But that's Bina, that's Nun, that's 50 Sharim. But there's one level that's higher, and that's called Lamed Beis Nesivis HaChochma. They're like 32 pathways in the world of Chochmah, which is Atzilus, that's higher than Bina, one world higher. Says the Bnei Yissaschar that the word kavod is begematria 32. Shelo nohagu kavod zeh lo zeh, that they didn't portray and didn't live with proper kavod, means that they were teaching each other the Mishnayos. And all of Torah Shebaal Peh, at the highest level, like Rabbi Akiva was at the Olam of Atzilus, Lamed Beis, 32 pathways are. There's Nun Shari Bina, but in the world of Chochmah, there are 32 pathways, and that was the highest level of learning the Torah, and that's why Moshe Rabbeinu said, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, I want you to take out the people from Mitzrayim and bring them to Har Sinai to receive the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu right away protested. And he said, you're going to give the Torah through me? Give it through Rabbi Akiva, who will understand more in the Torah than I. Because if you look in a Sefer Torah, you will see that there are lines above the letters in some cases, and Moshe Rabbeinu did not know what those lines represented, but Rabbi Akiva came, as says the Gemara, and he darshaned on each line above the letter, tilim shel halachas, bushel baskets of halachas, from each tag, from each line. And that was what Moshe Rabbeinu said. Give the Torah through Rabbi Akiva. He will know more. So we see how big in Torah Rabbi Akiva was, and he was able to be masig the Torah from the level of Atzilus, of Lamed Beis, the Sivas, but the Talmidim couldn't grasp it at that level. Shalom noagu kavod, and kavod is begematria, as I said, 32. That in that realm of teaching and learning together each Talmud, they couldn't reach it. And they had close hanefesh. They died in the process because they couldn't reach that level. So says the Bnei Yissaschar in the name of the Arizal. And that's the pshat of what happened. And the Arizal once passed in Tveria, the mountain where Rabbi Akiva is buried, and he said that no one on that mountain should live in a house or build a business on that, because all 24,000 Talmidim are buried on that mountain. You don't see it, there's no matzeves, but you should not step or build or live on that mountain, because all those neshamas of the 24,000 Talmidim are there. Now, what would most of us have done if you built a yeshiva, and let's say you have in Lakewood 7,000 Talmidim, and here it was 24,000. So it was like almost 4 times as much. And they died out. Rabbi Akiva at that point, most people would have said, look, I tried. My yeshiva was wiped out. There were only 5 Talmidim, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Yehuda, Reb Meir, that lived from all of the 24,000, those 5. So most people would have closed up shop and said, listen, I tried. And look what happened, that my Talmidim died out. And they all stopped dying. In other words, with the thousands each day dying, that it came to Lag BaOmer and no one died. And we're going to talk when we get closer to Lag BaOmer why that day had such a mystical, magnetic effect that not one Talmud died. That means the day before 600 could have died. And the next day, not one. Why? And that answer we're going to talk when we talk about Lag BaOmer, Bez Hashem, in 2 weeks. But they stopped, and we keep 32 days complete, and then the 33rd day is Miktzis Hayom Kekula. That means when you come in to the 33rd day, you do not have to refrain from a wedding or a haircut all day, Because we have, for instance, in Avelis, when a person, lo aleinu, lo aleichem, 1,000 times, sits Shiva. So they're supposed to sit 7 days. But everyone sits 6 days, and on the 7th day they sit for an hour. They daven in the morning, and that's it. They walk around the block, then the Shiva is over. They can come home on the 7th day and take a shower and do whatever they have to do. And that's the same thing because of Miktzas Hayom Kekula, that we have a rule in Halacha that part of a day is considered like the whole day. So therefore, the person sitting Shiva does not have to sit 7 complete days. They sit 6, and on the 7th day, they sit for like an hour or so, and then they're able to go out. Likewise, during Sfira, we're supposed to have Avelis 33 days, but the 33rd day, we don't have to sit and have Avelis and refrain the whole 33rd day. And if, let's say, Lag Bomer comes out on a Sunday, like it does this year, so then even Erev Shabbos, you're allowed to take a haircut, which is only 31 days. Because of Kavod Shabbos, it wouldn't be nice for Shabbos if you need a haircut badly and you come into Shabbos needing the haircut. And then as soon as Shabbos is over in the morning, Sunday morning, Lag Bomer, you go take a haircut. So the halacha is, look in the Mishnah Berurah and all the Shulchan Aruchs, paskin, that if Lag Bomer is Sunday, L'Koved Shabbos, you can, on the 31st day, without having had 33 days, you can take the haircut L'Koved Shabbos. Now, most people would have given up. He was left from 24,000 with 5 Talmidim. But he rebuilt the whole Masorah and Torah world with these 5 Talmidim. He did not throw up his hands and said, okay, Min HaShamayim, they died. I worked my whole life to develop these students and make sure that they were at the highest level of being Tanoim, and they died. I'm retiring. But he didn't retire. He always, a new day of life with health, was able to throw himself into the work and rebuilt with just the 5 Talmidim. So there is a tremendous lesson of what Klal Yisrael is, and that's why he was the one to say, Zeh Klal Gadol B'Torah. Because is there anyone else who made a greater example of loving another Jew than Rabbi Akiva, who lost everyone and didn't throw up? He said, we're not going to leave Klal Yisrael like this. And he took just the 5 and rekindled and redeveloped these 5. So when we have in our pasuk in the parsha, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that you should love your fellow Jew like yourself, there's no one who lived the life of a greater example in the most dynamic, beautiful way than Rabbi Akiva. And we have to remember that Rabbi Akiva was the eternal optimist. He was standing with his chaverim, other Tanoim, outside the Bais Hamikdash after it was destroyed, and they saw a fox come out of the Kodesh Kedoshim. All of his friends tore their begodim like someone who rices kriya by a levaya. They tore and they cried. And Rabbi Akiva was standing there laughing. So they turned to him and said, what are you laughing about? Didn't you just see the fox coming out of Kodesh Kedoshim? So he said, yes, I saw it, and I'll tell you why I'm laughing. Because the Navi predicted two things. He said there's going to be a Churban Beis HaMikdash, and there will be foxes walking out of the Kodesh Kedoshim, like we just saw, and there was Churban, but he also said there's going to be eternal Geula. So just like he was right about the first thing, he's right about the second thing. And we can rejoice. Min HaShamayim, this had to happen. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted this, and that's what he did. But the second half will also be kept, that Geula one day will come to Klal Yisrael, the redemption with eternal bliss and the luster of millions of years ahead, eternity, with Klal Yisrael basking in the atmosphere of laughter and the atmosphere of simcha and the atmosphere of enjoying the Shekhinah. And that's why he laughed. So he was the only one who laughed, because he was the same one that rebuilt Klal Yisrael with the 5 Tanoim that survived. And that was his life. So there was no one more appropriate to say Zeh Klal Gadol Batorah, because he lived every moment of his life realizing the value and the structure of each and every Yid. Now, the pasuk says in our Seder, "V'chisavo el ha'oretz unatatem kol eitz machol v'araltem eitz pirio," that there's a mitzvah in the Torah of orla. What is orla? That means when you plant a tree, you cannot take its fruits for 3 years. You have to just leave it alone. And even the 4th year is called neta ravai, that again, you cannot benefit from the fruits. In the 5th year, you begin enjoying the tree. And the pasuk ends up and says, "Lahoisif lachem tevuasa," that you're going to have, and Rashi brings out that you're going to have an unbelievable bracha. You think you wasted 4 years. You planted a tree, and fruits were coming out, gorgeous fruits, and you had to just leave it. So the pasuk ends with a bracha from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're going to see that you're going to derive such benefit from these trees that you will never even remember the loss of the first year. So the Meforshim ask a question. Why is it that by Orla the bracha was given? Why not, they were spending money on korbanos, they were giving maisras, they were giving truma, they were taking from their money and giving it away. So why wasn't there a bracha that if the people are feeling bad that they're giving away so much this and so much that they're not going to, at the end of the story, have a loss, that there will always be a bracha? Why isn't that said by any of them? Only by Orla. So Meforshim say, because a person could accept a loss of money because he feels that he'll make the money back, but he can't forgive the loss of time. He had to sit there after pruning and sowing and doing everything he had to do to make sure that this tree would blossom, and flourish and do all of these things. I made a bracha right before the video. That money, he can accept the loss. But time, he can't accept. So the Torah had to, because sitting there for 4 years, watching the fruits fall off, you can eat such delicious fruits, you can make so much money at the marketplace. The loss of the time, not the money, because money a person could accept quicker than the loss of time. And like somebody once said that, money you can make back. In one transaction, you can make so much money that it equaled the 4 years. But time doesn't come back. If you lost the time, you lost it. And that brings us to, the Sedra is replete with what you would call Jewish values. And most of them people look at like it has nothing to do with us. These are, we understand, lo tignovu, you're not allowed to steal. Most people would answer you, frankly, I don't remember ever stealing in my life. I never put my hand into someone else's pocket. Or in my business, I did something with the invoice to literally steal money from someone. I lived basically an honest life. So this lo tignovu has really nothing to do with me. But the Meforshim all say, and many of the Meforshim, Rav Yisrael Salanta used to use Parshas Kedoshim as his basis for his Musar shmuzin with all the things in it. And imagine, and I'm going to give a few examples because I feel that we are not removed from these psukim as if it has nothing to do with us. But for instance, in the case of not stealing, if somebody, the Chavetz Chaim says beferish, that if somebody goes and steals sleep from someone, in other words, he wants to talk with a friend, there's 3 people sleeping in the dormitory, but he wants to talk, he's interested in the conversation and what they're saying, and he's talking so loud that he's not allowing 3 people to sleep. That lost time for the sleep is gone forever. But money, if you stole from someone's wallet, you can give them back the wallet. You can give them back the money. So says the Chavetz Chaim. So the lo signovu has ramification in 20 different cases. Like the Gemara in Baba Basra says that if somebody adjusts their weights of a grocery store, they're selling you the fruit and the candy and everything by the pound, and they put it on the scale, but they adjusted the scale that there's a 5% cheating going on that the person doesn't know. So the Baba Basra, the Gemara in Baba Basra says on Daf Pei Ches that is worse than incest, than if you're sleeping with your sister. That's shocking. But that's what the Gemara says, because the incest you can do tshuva on, but you can't do tshuva on something that's lost. The time that they were sleeping, they lost 2 hours sleep because you were outside inconsiderate and you didn't come over to be there, to be careful not to talk too loud and not to wake up someone. Now, the Zohar, and as a matter of fact, many of those tzaddikim from 200 used to cite that the Geneva could be if you come home and you say, one of them said it, that if you tell over a Dvar Torah that you heard, which is a beautiful Dvar Torah, and you come home and you tell your wife the Dvar Torah, and you say it as if it was your thoughts. That's a format of stealing. Even though I must tell you that the Zohar HaKadosh says in Parshas Vo'eschanan that Yachol, because it says lo tignovu, or lo tignov, that you may think, you see, trup, the trup, the notes on each and every word add to the pshat of the pasuk. And the Zohar Kodesh says, lo tignov, you're not allowed to steal. Lo has on it a tipcha, so that's like a stop. That's like a colon. Lo, you're not allowed to steal. But tignov, you should steal. And what does the Zohar Kodesh say you could steal? Yachol lemignev daite de Rabbi bioraisa, that if his Rebbe said beautiful things in his class, and he then went to a shir, and his next Rebbe doesn't know that the Rebbe before said it, and he acts as if he's saying something, and the Rebbe said, wow, you thought of such a beautiful pshat, you're fooling the Rebbe. So the Zohar Kodesh says that you're allowed to do. You're allowed in Torah because it permeates and it promotes and it increases the exchange and everything else that's done, that you're allowed to falsify, I guess, act as if it's your own in Divrei Torah to a Rebbe, that he should think higher of you and better of you. But in general, we see how it trickles down, this concept of not stealing, that a person who is very involved in his community could be really affected by this. And another example is the pasuk in this week's Seder says, "V'lifnei iver lo sitein michshol," that you're not supposed to put, the pasuk says, a stumbling block in front of a blind man. Now, when you see this pasuk, you think, I would never in my life do such a mean-spirited thing. A guy is blind, and to put a piece of wood in front of him that he can't see and he's going to end up tripping, you have to be a miserable human being to do such a thing. But the Gemara in Moed Katan says that if a person slaps their son and the son is older, he deserved a slap. But he's older, he's 19 years old. You're oiver lo lifnei iver lo sitein michshol, because this son could end up being so angry that you hit him, that he'll hit you back, and he's over the diaraisa of kibbud av va'em, that he would hit the person. So you're not allowed to put him into a position that he could get so angry and do something that he's going to be over a diaraisa. That's part of lifnei iver, the Gemara says in Moed Katan, that a person has to be very careful about. And it even says that when people come together and if they want to talk Lashon Hara, if a person is arrogant, he's over lifnei iver. Why? Because he's the big shot of the crowd. And no one wants to start up with him. No one wants to say, let's change the topic. Let's not talk this Lashon Hara. So being arrogant is putting a stumbling block in front of the people to express themselves properly and totally to avoid a calamity of, and the Gemara says in the Yerushalmi that if somebody talks Lashon Hara, it's keneged all three severe averas of killing, adultery, and Shvichas Domim, Gilui Aroyos, and forgive me for being so tired that I'm forgetting the third thing, but it'll come to my mind in a moment and I'll share it with you. But if we are, and this week's parsha, it talks about the pasuk says not to lo selech rochel bi'amech. What's the difference between lashon hara and rechilas? Lashon hara is if I talk bad about you, it could be something 100% true. That's lashon hara. But if I go over to somebody and say, "Do you know what somebody said about you?" That's rechilas. That's rechilas. And the example that I jotted down that I want to say, and Meforshim, the Rambam even talks about not flaunting your wealth because you could cause people to talk badly about you out of the jealousy. You're causing jealousy, which brings out the worst in the other person. And lo samud al dam riach, which is in this week, said you're not allowed to stand by when someone, let's say somebody is hit by a car, lo aleinu, lo aleichem, and they say, listen, I'm too busy, I'm running to a meeting that I was waiting for 3 months. I can't call, I don't have the time to call Hatzalah or to run over and see that how is the person, can I do something? That's lo samid al dam riacha, which any normal person would run and do what they have to do. But lo samid al dam riacha goes if you have in your house something that, let's say, a cleaner, cleansing fluids, and you have kids walking around, 2 years old, 3 years old, that they think it's orange juice, they think it's apple juice, and they're drinking poison. That's part of lo samid al dam re'echa, that we cannot just stand idly by and ignore situations. That comes into the larger scope of what the pasuk is talking about. And putting a fence or a barrier on top of your roof. If people go up there, even a man to fix something goes up to fix the unit of air conditioning or something, it's on the roof, and you didn't put up a proper fence, and the guy falls off, you're guilty in Shemayim of his death, because lo samid al dam riyecha. So this parsha is filled with different things in how it should seep into our hearts how to be Yidden. That means what starts off with Kedoshim Tiyu, it's a saintly thought, but as we explained, it's not just saintliness, it's living with limits and boundaries and godliness in a proper way. Now, we have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh this week, and some spell Iyar Ani Hashem Rofecha, it's a month of healing, and some spell it Aleph Yud Yud Reish, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Rachel, which are the 4 wheels of the chariot, the heavenly chariot, the Merkava of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the second day of Rosh Chodesh is the Yortzeit of Reb Mendel of Vitebsker, whose name I have mentioned to you many, many times. And he is a shining example of how, when Yidden were so devastated that the Mezritcha Magid was nifter, how to pick up the spirits and the levels. And when then the Noam HaMelech wanted to have his own derech that Talmidim and Hasidim should follow, many of his Chaverim chose to come under his wing, like the Choiz of Lublin, Reb Mendel of Rimenev, the Apterov, the Koznitzer Magid, all of these great tzaddikim who had their own flocks of Hasidim accepted to be under the umbrella of the Noam Elimelech, and the Balatanya began Chabad. So all of these things, as we come into a tekufa of self-respect, because when we count Sfira, it's magic. The counting of the day seeps into the innermost sanctum of our neshamas and has a tremendous effect on our ruchnias. We're just counting a day. If we did it in the middle of the summer or the winter, it'd be meaningless. We wouldn't even know why we're doing it. But in the Yemei HaSfira, it has a magic effect and is tremendously able to do and to pull off what it's meant to do. We should try our best not to miss a day of Sfira, because it's different combinations. In other words, when you bake the chocolate cake, it's got to have the sugar, the chocolate, the flour, and if you forget one item, there's lacking. If you take the whole mixture and put it in and you bake it, but when you actually eat the cake, you're going to taste that there's something, no sugar was put in. It tastes a little bit flat. That's the same thing with counting of Sfira. Every day is a different combination of Chesed Shebegvura, Tiferes Shebehoid, and each one brings out different results. So lucky is the person who never forgets, never oversleeps, and of course if you do, you can't make a bracha during the day, but you could count the day of Sfira, and that night you can resume making a bracha as you count Sfira. Bracha v'hatzlocha.